Now, one of the things I'm going to start saying a lot is what we in the Christian community should be doing, or could easily be doing, is shopping around a version of Christianity wherein we have on purpose watered down our metaphysical commitments. So we're shopping around a version of Christianity that is virtually unassailable. This is kind of what Jordan Peterson did automatically and intuitively. He's not actually a Christian, but he holds to positions that are theist leaning. Why? Because he proportions his belief to the evidence. There's one main paradigm that every single solitary atheist, bar none, would agree to. And it's the main driving paradigm of atheism. And I think that paradigm is actually a good one and really pretty strong and robust. We should proportion our beliefs to the evidence. I want to believe things that are true, and I decide on what's true based on the evidence. And we should proportion our confidence in a proposition based solely on the evidence presented. Now, that's a pretty good operating paradigm. So if we want to win debates with atheists, there should be a really big discrepancy between things that maybe even things that you privately believe and things that you are publicly willing to defend. The things that you are willing to defend in public, you should have really strong, sufficient evidentiary warrant for, or you shouldn't be debating them. Now, the example I brought up was when Rebekah went on, Rebekah from Bread of Life, who everybody likes. Everybody likes Rebekah, right? Yeah, she's a really nice person, Craig. We like her more than you. Okay, well, I didn't ask that, but all right, fine. Yeah, they like me more than you. You sound a lot like Stephanie, Rebekah. You only do one voice, Craig. Oh, okay. Oh, that explains that. You only got one voice. Yeah, she does sound like me. I only do one voice. So all my female impersonations are going to sound surprisingly similar. So if that gets confusing, deal with it. Anyways, so Rebekah went on to defend young earth creationists. Now, first of all, I didn't know she was a young earth creationist. But you should not be defending it publicly. Why? Because look what happened to her. She basically got her hat handed to her. And normally, so much so that she put out a video 2 days later that said, "Atheists, let's talk." And I honestly thought she was going to deconvert. Because that's how deconversions have normally occurred. One of the things I'm going to point out to you, people carry around metaphysical presuppositions, metaphysical priors that they don't even know that they're carrying around, and they're strongly influential on the things that they believe and assent to, and they don't even know they have them. So it's a common story. For example, with Dr. Josh, that's literally why he deconverted. Once upon a time, he was a young, dashing young Christian man, ready to set the world on fire for the gospel, may have even been in the army or something, in the Air Force, something like that. But he was a very, very committed Bible literalist, and of the type who, what they told him is, if one note of this is wrong, if one tittle of this is wrong, the whole of Christianity falls apart. Now, why did he believe that? Because he had a prior philosophical position, as the presuppositionists will say, a paradigm of reality, a paradigm through which you view the world. In sociology, they call it your social imaginary. It's basically the goggles through which you view reality. A lot of people have metaphysical prior commitments that they don't even know they have. This is going to be very important in the video to come, and it's what I'm going to elaborate on. But most people don't even know that they have them. And they're really, really important. Why? Because if they are in place, so Dr. Josh had one that he wasn't really fully aware he had, and they hammered it home. Fundamentalist Christians hammer that home. If the literalist type of Bible-believing Christians, if one letter of this Bible is proven false, if one letter of this, the whole of Christianity falls apart. So he had that prior metaphysical commitment, not even fully aware that he had it, and they hammered it home to him 100 times a day. And lo and behold, he went out to get his doctorate or whatever, and found out, wait, some of these things are either not true or at least debatable. All of a sudden, the whole thing collapses. That's a common story in atheism. I thought it was going to happen to Rebekah. Why? Because she was a young earth creationist. Okay, if you are a young earth creationist, you can perfectly agree to it. I don't care what you privately believe. But if you're trying to present Christianity to people, you shouldn't be shopping around in public. Why? Because it's virtually indefensible. It's virtually indefensible. That's why I don't think it's true, which Rebekah soon found out. So she went to debate Guttsick Gibbon, who basically handed her hat to her. Guttsick Gibbon, all Guttsick Gibbon did was, assemble an army of facts, data, and just present them to her. And lo and behold, it was really hard for Rebekah to stand her ground. She had a couple of counter arguments, but they seemed not to be very strong in the face of overwhelming evidence, in the face of the overwhelming evidence that, to the contrary, that it really looks like young Earth creation, the Earth is not, in fact, 6,000 years old. Almost all of the empirical data and the sense data and the facts seem to indicate that it isn't. So she may not become a young Earth creationist one day. Don't care. Don't care at all, Rebekah. I don't care what you believe, just like I don't care what atheists believe. I don't care. But remember, you're in the business of trying to present the gospel of Jesus Christ, not young Earth creationism. So you wound up discrediting Christianity because atheists pull a sleight of hand, and a lot of them do this. I don't know if Guttsick Gibbon is doing it, but I suspect she is. Why? Because her entire channel is mysteriously geared towards debunking young Earth creationism. The sleight of hand is, I debunk young Earth creationism, and the atheists watch and go, see, Christianity is false. Nothing to do with Christianity, guys. I'm a Christian, not a young Earth creationist. If you are participating in that sleight of hand, you are either not paying attention to the obvious, what young Earth creation and Christianity are not synonymous. They're not. I'm not a young Earth creationist. So you can believe, and it has nothing to do with the existence of God. So you are participating in a sleight of hand on purpose, or you're just not noticing. You're not using good critical thinking. Why? Because one has nothing to do with the other. I suspect, I don't know this for a fact, I'll look at Guttsick Gibbon's channel, but I suspect that she's priming the pump to kind of, have everyone go, see, atheism is true. Why? Because young Earth creationism is false. Both things can be false at the exact same time. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you should not. Anyways, the point is, you, the Christian, can be shopping around a version of Christianity that is virtually unassailable and winning all the debates. Why? Because you should only be defending in public that which is robust and has sufficient evidentiary warrant to justify defending it in public. You can believe something in private. Believe whatever you want. But in public, when you're trying to defend, you're trying to be an apologist, you should only be defending things that are sufficient evidentiary warrant for. That's why I don't think the resurrection arguments are good arguments. The underlying premise is flawed, and the Christian's usually going to lose the debate. The underlying premise, here are the facts, here are the compilation of material facts. You have no choice, resurrection or bust. The atheist is going to say, I have plenty of other options. Those facts don't mount up to resurrection or bust. Now, as I pointed out, the thing missing, why it's so easy for Christians to believe in a resurrection, even though atheists will tell you, oh, it's wildly outlandish. Why is it so easy for Christians to believe in? Because of a prior metaphysical commitment that almost every Christian holds to, that is really, really strong in almost every Christian. That if there is a God, that being is awesomely powerful beyond all human understanding. Now, that's a perfectly logical conclusion. I didn't say there is a God. Hear it again. Hear it clearly, please. I said, if there is a God, then that being would be awesomely powerful beyond all human understanding or all human comprehension. That's just pure simple logic, really easy to understand, and that's why so many Christians believe in a resurrection. Why? Because if we believe in that being, we have that prior metaphysical commitment that that God got to be awesomely powerful. But think about it. He created everything. That's beyond human comprehension right there. So to say that he performed a resurrection ain't that heavy of a lift at all. It's not even close. It's not that hard to believe. It's really hard to believe, and this is why it's a bad argument to present to atheists, if you have a prior metaphysical commitment, a prior philosophical commitment of what? Naturalism. Why? Because naturalism is a closed-end system that says there are no such thing as supernatural occurrence, unless I have, unbelievably extraordinary evidence to get me to change from that worldview. So what we should be doing really easily, so we can win all these debates really cleanly, really simply, really easily. That's why I said, go look at the pre-suppers. The only two debates Matt Dillahunty was in that presented any real challenge were by pre-suppers. And a matter of fact, more than presenting a real challenge, they basically got him to admit to God. I swear to God. Well, he did. Right. Yeah, he did. He did. I'm pretty sure it was in the Jay Dyer debate. Matt Dillahunty basically admitted this. Yes, the laws of logic exist. And they are invisible, immaterial, and transcendent. So Matt Dillahunty, in public, admitted to an invisible, immaterial, transcendent law. That doesn't sound suspiciously close to, he basically admitted to God. Now, Matt Dillahunt to be the first to tell you, that's not God, no way, I didn't admit to God, no way, that's not God with all the baggage. Okay, the baggage need not be there. The baggage is something that was put there mostly by fundamentalist Christians, and I understand, so some of you who were raised as fundamentalist Christians, that baggage can be pretty intense. And as I explained in one of the other videos, why? Because you're basically sentenced to hell for doing relatively benign, inconsequential, stupid things that every young kid does. Went to see a horror movie with my friends. Oh, you're gonna burn in hell. Went to see Halloween. I watched Halloween on Halloween night. You're gonna burn in hell for doing that. So they hammered home this version of God that was, kind of indefensible. He's really, really pointlessly cruel. Yeah, he's going to send you to hell for doing basically nothing. Doing really harmless, stupid stuff that every kid does. So you kind of left the atheists with no choice, the ones who were fundamentalists. Either God is capricious and inexplicably cruel, he's going to punish me forever for nothing, or hopefully that being doesn't exist. Hopefully that God doesn't exist. I really hope he doesn't exist. That's why Pine Creek is so adamant. I really hope God really hopes God doesn't exist. That's his hope. Why? Because he doesn't want, he's even said it. I've heard him say this. His metaphysical commitment is really weird. Thinks if there is a God, then all sorts of innocent human beings are going to suffer from now until the end of time. Innocent people. Hindus, nice guy Hindus are going to be burned in hell. Because he's got a really literalist interpretation of Christianity, a really literalist fundamentalist interpretation of Christianity, and he still thinks that's Christianity. That's why he can be so, maneuvers so much away from just general theism. See, the smart atheists already know this. If you attack the metaphysical presuppositions that undergird, instead of trying to present evidence for things that do not have sufficient evidentiary warrant, I believe in a resurrection and I believe in a virgin birth, but I don't believe them based on the facts. Why? Because the material facts don't add up to a miracle, guys, ever. Period. End of discussion. It's a terrible argument. And you're trying to convince a naturalist who in their prior metaphysical philosophical commitment has told you straight up, I don't believe in miracles at all. So first you got to get him to believe in miracles a little before you're going to get him to believe in the great centerpiece miracle of all Christianity. The only thing I was pointing out in my analysis of Pine Creek Doug is it ain't that heavy of a lift. If you have what? A prior philosophical commitment that you're not even very much aware that you have. So let's get to the heart of the matter. We can move every atheist. I might not be saying it all that well, but I promise you on something really strong, really easy, really clean, really robust. Let's start winning these things. And winning them every single time, hands down. Right, Stephanie? Right, Greg, let's do it! I'm tearing a new one! I'm tearing a new one! I'll go Old Testament on their ass. They'll be sorry they ever met me. You need a new tagline, Stephanie. It makes me sound sufficiently badass, though, doesn't it? Yeah, it really does. They really do think they're quick into their boots. Just let me at them. I understand that. All right, good girl. Never mind. Keep your tagline. I'll try to think of another one, but so far I can't think of one. So Stephanie's going to come kick your ass. Why? Because I'm going to teach her how to present a proper argument that's structured properly, that doesn't bite off more than it can chew. The conclusion is only the conclusion warranted by the evidence. Period. Then there's nothing they can argue with. And what we can do easily, mind you. Now, keep in mind, when I talk about philosophical atheists, usually everyone understands I'm referring to specific people, Dave Rollins, Philip Mueller, what's your name, Joe? Those guys, right? But there's also philosophical atheists higher up the food chain who are also agnostics and atheists who, to tell you to God's honest truth, I listen to them. I've been a lot more influenced by them than I have by apologists. I listen to them a lot more. Some of you will know the names: John Vervaeke, Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Kastrup. Everybody knows I've been influenced by Bernardo Kastrup. Philip Goff, Joe Schmidt, not quite in the same category, but Joe Schmidt and Carlo Rovelli. All those people are atheists and or agnostics. Now, why is that important? Because if you asked John Vervaeke, for example, who is a philosopher, what are his prior philosophical commitments? What are his metaphysical underpinnings? He'd probably tell you one of two things. Sometimes he'd say, I don't know, I'm not sure, which is a perfectly legitimate answer. That's why the presuppers aren't that great. Why? Because they don't allow that answer. That's a perfectly legitimate one. The presuppers should be winning all the time. I'll get into that in a second. Why? Because their philosophical justifications are actually correct and robust. But they're trying to accomplish too much in the debate. Get into that in a second. So John Vervaeke, getting back to him. John Vervaeke, for example, if you asked him, what are your prior metaphysical commitments, would probably say, A, I'm not sure, or B, I'm a Neoplatonist of sorts. He's been heavily influenced by Neoplatonism. Now, why is that important? What did I say? We could be shopping around a version of Christianity where the metaphysical commitments are watered down to the point where it's virtually unassailable. Now, think of what gets hard to prove about Christianity. Specific religious claims. Some atheists already know this. That's why they're starting to crybaby, you should be arguing for Jesus, you should be arguing for general theism. Why? Because general theism is easy to prove, or at least easy to give sufficient evidence and sufficient philosophical justification in warrant for. It really is. That's why they're saying that. Why? Because they know they're going to start losing debates. Why? Because it's really easy to give sufficient justification, sufficient evidentiary warrant for general theism. It really is. We've practically got fully constructed arguments that are virtually unassailable, almost already there. Not Pine Creek. What's your name? Inspiring Philosophy. Inspiring Philosophy is not Pine Creek. Different people altogether. Inspiring Philosophy's almost there. He's almost got one that's completely rock solid. It needs to be adjusted a little, but then it's rock solid. It does not prove Christianity, but it gives you really strong, sufficient evidentiary warrant for general theism. How does it do that? Again, let's go back to John Vervaeke. John Vervaeke, if asked to talk about his philosophical commitments, his prior philosophical metaphysical positions, he'd probably describe himself as a Neoplatonist. Why is that important? Because think of the first sentence of the book of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, if you know anything about philosophy, you know exactly what that is, the Logos. It is virtually identical to Neoplatonism. There's forms of the Logos, the Word, as the logical structure underpinning reality, and virtually all it appears time and time again in all sorts of philosophies and all sorts of religions. All the time. It's when the religions start trying to get specific that the contradictions come. So, for example, I told you to go watch Thought Adventure podcast, right? They're Muslims. Their arguments are virtually identical to mine, or to most Christians. They do the Kalam, that one, they do that one. They do it better than most Christians, and they do the contingency argument a lot better than most Christians. Virtually identical argument. How is that? They can't all be right, but they can all be wrong, because the metaphysical underpinning is virtually identical. The Logos, transcendent other. They call it Allah, but they're talking about an omnipotent, omnipresent. They're talking about virtually identical ontology. Now we can go, yeah, but they're wrong because you don't contact Allah by doing whatever they say. Yeah, fine, that's all specifics. Once you start nailing down to specifics, that's when cultural differences arise and things seem contradictory. The only thing I'm pointing out is that the Logos, as defined by the book of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, were identical. The Logos is virtually identical to Neoplatonism of philosophy that shows up time and time again all over the world. And if someone is an atheist or an agnostic, a Neoplatonist is the only option on the table that is philosophically robust and coherent. Does that make sense yet? You might not be making sense of this just yet. I understand that I'm expecting you guys to really be sharp and throwing out a lot at once. But I'm expecting some of you to get this. And if you don't quite get it yet, you'll get it 4 or 5 videos from now. So the Logos and Neoplatonism are virtually identical. What is the Logos? The Logos is Christianity shorn of metaphysical commitments. So we don't go and try to prove Jesus walked on water. Why? Because that's virtually unprovable. It's indefensible. Even if Jesus did walk on water, there's not sufficient evidentiary warrant to prove that to anybody anywhere under the sun. It's also why we shouldn't be arguing for a soul. Why? Because there's not sufficient evidentiary warrant to prove that to anywhere to anybody under the sun. But what we can do and prove quite easily, and this is why I say the pre-supper arguments are really strong, is get the atheist, and intelligent philosophical atheists are already 2 steps ahead of us and already doing this, to examine the metaphysical commitments, the prior metaphysical commitments that they already hold, take them out in the cold light of day and go, do these make sense? Are they coherent? Again, I think I said in this video, if I didn't say it, I'll say it a lot. Matt Dillahunty, in his debate with the pre-suppers, already agreed in public to this. He agreed to this in public. He said this, not the Christian, Matt Dillahunty, supposedly the atheist. Yes, the laws of logic exist. Yes, they are transcendent, invisible, and immaterial. What is the difference between saying that exists and saying just watering down God to transcendent other small g God? And Matt Dillahunty basically just said, I agree that there's a God. I agree that there's a God. No, he didn't. No, you got it wrong. Word salad. It's not word salad. He did agree to that in public. Why? Because it is the only philosophical position on the table that is robust and defensible. And this is why I said, think of the metaphysics of math. You got three mathematical positions, right? Platonist, nominalist, which is a lot of atheists, smart atheists will hold to. Why? It's robust and defensible. And then you have fictionalist. Most atheists are mathematical fictionalists. Why is it important? Because it's totally incoherent. Get them to examine their metaphysics, their metaphysical prior commitments, take them out in the cold light of day and examine them, go, do they make sense? Are you a mathematical fictionalist? Because a lot of atheists are. Why? It's the most consistent with, Aaron Ross style atheism. John Vervaeke, for example, who I've been bringing up, right? He would describe himself as a Neoplatonist. If pressed on his metaphysical commitments, those are probably the ones he would say. He's closer in spirit to me than Aaron Ross. That's my point. We don't have to work very hard. Just get atheists to examine what undergirds their philosophy and really take it out in the cold light of day. Then we don't have to work very hard. Why? John Vervaeke is closer in spirit to me than Aaron Ross. He's a lot more similar to me than Aaron Ross. Wouldn't surprise me if John Vervaeke became a theist within the next year. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And he decided that as a neuroscientist based solely on the evidentiary warrant. He decided while investigating religions, hey, there is such a thing as wisdom truths that religions and faith traditions are really particularly good at producing. Then he said, why is this so? And he started examining it based on the facts, the evidentiary warrant, the facts, the empirical data. So he basically did a Guttsick Gibbon on it and said, let me examine all the facts and line up all the facts. And the facts are really obvious. They point to the conclusion. In religious traditions, you have things like rituals, trances, things like that. Okay? People take mescaline and start doing dances and rituals and chants. And what are they doing? They're in effect blowing their mind. Sickness will surely take the mind where minds don't usually go. Come on, the amazing... Didn't work. All right. I thought it would work. Never mind. It's from The Who, from Tommy. Tommy, can you hear me? It's an underrated album, by the way. Tommy's great. There's even a song about Jesus in there. Something about... how can he be saved? But Tommy doesn't know who Jesus is. Tommy doesn't know what day it is. He doesn't know who Jesus was and what praying is. How can he be saved from the eternal grave? I swear to God, it's a really cool album, actually. It's really innovative and intelligent. I love it. All right, never mind. Just a little sidetrack. And then Tommy becomes, the premise of the story is Tommy's a deaf, dumb, and blind kid, but he sure plays a mean pinball. That's the one you probably know, right? He's a pinball wizard. There has to be a twist. Pinball wizard's got such a supple wrist. How do you think he does? I don't. That's Tommy. He's a pinball wizard. Why? He's deaf, dumb, and blind kid, great at pinball, and then he becomes a savior. He becomes, I swear to God, that's the premise. I swear to God. He becomes a savior. And then, in the end, he's got his cult following because he's so good. I guess because he's so good at pinball. I'm not sure if they elaborate. And he becomes a savior figure and, welcome to the camp. I guess you all know why we're here. My name is Tommy, and I became aware this year. If you want to follow me, you've got to play pinball, see? Put in your ear corks, become deaf. Put in your eye shades, you know where to put the ball. Dun, 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 dun. I swear to God, that's the premise. It's really pretty sharp. All right, I'll change the subject, but whatever. All right, back to what was I talking about? Yeah, Pinball Wizard. A lot of you probably know the song Pinball Wizard. That's probably the only one you know, and didn't actually realize that there's a story to the song. He's a pinball wizard because deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays the mean pinball. Because he feels all the bumpers become part of the machine. It's actually got a lot of like weird mystical. They were studying like weird stuff at the time. Anyways, and taking drugs. See, and taking drugs. So wisdom. He studied religions as a neuroscientist and found out that religious traditions were particularly good at producing wisdom truths. For example, for almost all major world religions will tell you humility as opposed to arrogance. Humility is a virtue. Now, just on pure practical terms, they're 100% correct. Why? It's a lot safer to be humble than it is to be arrogant. Arrogant, you become a target. If you're humble and stay close to the ground, you're never the target. I learned that a while ago playing dodgeball. One day I'll tell the dodgeball analogy story. It's really good. It's really good, trust me. Right now, I'll save it for another day. So, John Vervaeke is closer in spirit to me as an agnostic atheist than he is to Aaron Ra. Why? Because his metaphysical priors are the only ones that are robust enough to make any sense, and they're not necessarily atheist or agnostic, but they don't rule atheism or not agnosticism out. So they're consistent with atheism, agnosticism. Aaron Ra he would probably describe himself as a mathematical fictionalist, which is incoherent, and then he has described himself in Philosophy of Mind as a physicalist, which is also the weakest philosophical prior on the table when it comes to philosophy of mind. It may be true, but it's not very strong. It's not strong and robust. Now, Aaron Ra is the first person to tell you, and you've heard him say this 50,000 times if you heard him say it once. What does he want to do? I want to believe things, facts. You got any evidence? Nobody's ever shown me evidence. Evidence. That's Aaron Ra. He said that 50,000 times if he said it once, right? You've heard him shout that, right? You understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're not going to get him to see a resurrection. Why? Because there's not sufficient evidentiary warrant. But it would be really easy for us to go to Aaron Ra. Hey, let's examine your metaphysical underpinning. Let's examine the facts. The evidence. Let's examine the evidence and see if your metaphysical priors have sufficient evidentiary warrant. Because, in fact, they don't. A mathematical fictionist is an incoherent position. It's not some mysterious coincidence that almost every professional physicist, like Sir Penrose, are mathematical Platonists. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a Platonist. There are three positions. I think I said this in this video. If I didn't, I've said it in others. There are three positions: Platonist, nominalist, and fictionalist. Platonists and nominalists are all robust, defensible positions. Fictionalist is not. It's totally incoherent. I've seen atheists try and defend it. They fall apart. Why? Because it doesn't have any metaphysical grounding to it at all. Basically, the question on the table with that is really easy to understand the question. That's why I've moved to math. Okay, are mathematical truths invented or discovered? That's the question. If they're invented, a fictionalist is right. There's no way on earth they're invented. And then the fictionalist will try to explain how they are invented. 1,000,000 years ago, there was no math. Okay, but 1,000,000 years ago, if two brontosaurus walked onto a field, and then two brontosauruses walked onto the field following it, how many brontosauruses would there be, guys? 4. How do you know that? There's no math, remember? And nobody was there to count them. There would still have been how many? 4. Which means the math, the symbols we use that we call math, are only representational of what? The transcendent, immaterial, invisible truth. 2 + 2 = 4. Do you get it? I admit I'm going fast. Okay, I'm piling a lot of, hammering you home with a lot of facts and logic really quickly and shifting gears quickly and saying a lot of stuff. But everything I'm saying, if you slow down the video and you listen carefully, is completely and 100% true. The only important thing you need to know is John Vervaeke is an atheist/agnostic with a metaphysical underpinning, a prior metaphysical commitment that is fairly robust. Okay, we can't move Aaron Ra to believe in a resurrection. But we could probably easily move Aaron Ra to adopt John Vervaeke's metaphysical underpinnings. Why? Because we're not asking for too much. We're not demanding he work too hard. We're just demanding he do what he says he does, he automatically wants to do. Proportion his belief to the evidence. Remember what I started with? That's what he will tell you. I want to believe things that are facts and evidence for. Okay, well, some of the positions that he holds metaphysically have zero evidence for, and they're incoherent and they aren't true. And we could easily get him to recognize that. If we can't do it there in Rock because too close-minded, we could easily do it with someone like Paul Gia, who isn't so close-minded. Matter of fact, the reason why I stumbled onto this as an easy victory is because most intelligent atheists have already do this automatically. They already recognize some of the problems that arise, metaphysically speaking, by investigating with honesty on their own. That's why Emerson Green started leaning towards panpsychism. Why? Because he's intelligent and honest, and he started exploring the hard problem of consciousness and go, wait a minute, there is a hard problem here. There actually is a hard problem here. And what is that hard problem? It seems that consciousness itself seems irreducible to strictly physical properties, in principle. Now, there's the atheist standard answer. Emergent property of the brain doesn't tell us anything. And the other atheist standard answer, their mind and brain are identical. No, that can't be. That's incoherent. Again, if you examine the prior metaphysical commitments that a lot of, I'd say 80% of the people who call themselves atheists hold themselves to priors, metaphysical commitments that are virtually indefensible, that are incoherent, don't make any sense. Mathematical fiction is the biggest one. Why? Because it's incoherent. Again, go back and think of two brontos before math was invented. The truth that mathematical symbols represent is what we are talking about, not the symbols themselves. So they mistake the forest for the trees. So 2 million years ago, there was no math. But 2 million years ago, if two brontosaurus walked on a field and two followed it, there'd still be four. Nobody around to count them, but we all know for a fact by me telling that there'd be how many? 4. Why? Because 2 plus 2 equals 4. So we invented the symbolism to represent the transcendent, immaterial, invisible truth. Do you get it now? That time I said it good enough for you all clearly understand it. Do you get it now? You see? The thing that we invented is the symbols to represent what? The transcendent, immaterial, invisible truth that undergirds all of reality. Does that sound suspiciously to you similar to God, transcendent other? It should. Why? Because it's virtually identical. That's why it should. Because it's virtually identical. Wouldn't surprise me if John Vervaeke became a type of theist in a year. Wouldn't surprise me if Donald Hoffman did. Wouldn't surprise me if Carlo Rovelli did. Why? Because the metaphysical priors that they hold to are completely compatible with theism. Again, go back to the logos. In the beginning was what? The Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The logos undergirds all of reality. It's not that complicated. Mathematical truths undergird, there's the standard model of particle physics, right? Everybody who agrees is that's, standard science. Embedded in the standard model of particle physics are math. And they are representational of what? Transcendent, invisible, immaterial truth that undergirds reality. If that sounds suspiciously like God, it should. Why? Because it's virtually identical. It's virtually identical. And Matt Dillahunty agreed publicly that there's such a thing as a logical truth that is immaterial, invisible, and transcendent. Okay, that's virtually God. Now he'll say, that's not to say God, there's no baggage. The baggage doesn't need to be there. I get it. The fundamentalist Christians put the baggage there. So you think if there is a God, he's going to punish you for stupid things, for basically harmless crap. I went to see a horrible, you're going to burn it out. Basically harmless crap. A lot of Christians only half believe that stuff. That's the part they didn't tell you. I swear to God, that's the part they did. The same thing about conservatives, guys. I learned that firsthand. Why? Because my wife is conservative. And she thinks she's more conservative than she in fact is. A lot of times she holds positions that are contrary to conservatism. Like, for example, when her mom needed medicine, she mysteriously was for whatever, it was Medi-Cal, whatever it was, that helped pay for the medicine. It's not a conservative position. Why did she hold it? Because most people hold metaphysical priors that they aren't aware of. They say they're this, so how we win easily, hands down, without any fuss, no fussing, no fighting. Life is very short, and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friends. Life is very short, and there's no time to debate atheists from now till the end. Win the debates. Why? Water down your metaphysical commitments. Debate 2 debates that you can easily win. You can't prove a resurrection. Why? Because you can't. It's a faith-based position. You can't. It doesn't work like that. You can't prove it to a naturalist. Put it that way. The reason why we hold the position, recognize the real reason why we hold the position. Why? Because we have a prior philosophical conviction that's really, really strong and resolute. We believe that God, if there is a God, some of us don't fully believe in God who are theists. We only kind of sort of believe in God. But if that being exists, almost all of us believe that that being is powerful beyond all human understanding. Why? Because we pray. If we didn't pray, we wouldn't pray if we didn't believe that deep down inside. You petition the Lord with prayer. You ever hear that one from the Doors? You cannot petition the Lord with prayer. Can you give me sanctuary? I must find a place to hide, a place for me to... Okay, that was off. The prior metaphysical commitments are what usually guides people's knowledge, whether they know it or not. That's why I keep hammering away at materialism/physicalism and tried to show you that quantum mechanics debunks it. Remember I said in other videos, quantum mechanics is so trippy. That's what people have been saying since the 20s. It's not that trippy. It just is inconsistent with the prior metaphysical commitment known as physicalism/materialism. If you throw that prior commitment out, it's not that trippy and weird at all. It's not. It's just inconsistent with what science would have declared as reality prior to quantum mechanics. It just debunked physicalism/materialism, that's all. And there's a lot of scientists to this day who are unwilling to let go of the metaphysical prior. That's it. That's the only thing going on, guys. It seems really complicated. It's not. If you start looking at getting at the truth that undergirds things, you'll start seeing this stuff a lot more clearly. And then you'll realize this is a lot easier than we've been making it. A lot easier. We don't have to prove to people, weird aspects of Christianity that are hard to defend. Matter of fact, we shouldn't be. Why? Because that's too heavy of a load. You don't have sufficient evidentiary warrant to be shopping that around in public. There are too many contradictory facts that seem to rub against it. You can believe it privately if you want to, like inerrancy of the Bible. I'm not convinced one way or the other. There's a couple of ones that I don't see how they could possibly be anything other than like some guy penciling it in for his own agenda. I don't see how it could possibly be. There's a couple in there that are too weird. The ones that the atheists always bring up, those are basically irrelevant. But there's a couple in there that are just too weird, like stone the witch on a Sunday, like stone the guy for picking up sticks. It just seems like somebody penciled that in, like that wasn't part of the original manuscript. It just seems like it, because it's kind of jarring and weird. It's like, where does it say that? So maybe the Bible's inerrant. I'm not convinced one way or the other, but in terms of defending it in public, it's a really heavy lift, and it's too heavy of a load to prove. You have adopted a burden that can't be proved. Why? There's not sufficient evidentiary warrant for it. And there are a couple key facts that contradict. And if you explain those facts away, you're basically explaining them away. If you explain those facts away, all the atheists do move to a couple others. So yeah, you explained what? What's the contradiction that they love to talk about? I forget. Judas' guts pour out or something. Is he hanging or his guts pour out? Something like that. Yeah, you can reconcile that, I guess, kind of decently. Then they just move to another one. And the whole time you are explaining and losing ground. Why? Because the atheist is using the opportunity to sow doubt in the audience. Hello, wake up, that's what they're doing. Hello, wake up, that's what they're doing. And they're further complicating matters by making a sleight of hand. Instead of being upfront and going, well, the Bible probably isn't inerrant, they're trying to hoodwink the audience into going, see, God doesn't exist. Why? Because this guy can't explain a Bible contradiction. The Bible can have contradictions, guys, and be full of holes and not only partially, based in historical fact. And God could still exist. Stop defending biblical literalism. Why? Because you're creating atheists. You're creating atheists. You're giving people reason to doubt an ontology based on something that is completely irrelevant to the ontology. I promise. Stop doing it. Why? Because let's play this to win. Easy to win. Why? Water down your metaphysical commitments. You can hold to them privately. Privately, you can think the Bible's inerrant. And I get it. Some of the things that seem like contradictions, like some of the scriptures, this really happens. Some of the scriptures that are really trippy, You pray about it a lot, and it'll appear to you in a different light. You go, oh wow, that's not trippy anymore. That makes a lot of sense. That has happened to me more than once. So yeah, maybe the Bible is inerrant, and some of those trippy ones we're just not reading them right, or we're translating them wrong, or something like that. That could easily be. The point is, don't waste time going down that avenue. Why? Because you're going to lose the debate, and the atheist is going to discredit Christianity in the process. You're going to lose the debate. Why? There isn't sufficient evidentiary warrant for you to be defending it in public. It's just like the soul thing. J.P. Moreland and J.P. Moreland shops around an argument that is guaranteed to lose. I can prove a soul, but he's using the strongest tool in our shed. What the hard problem of consciousness can do is I can get you, the atheist, if you're honest, to re-examine your prior metaphysical commitments and go, hey, wait a minute. Maybe physicalism/materialism is insufficient to explain this data point. Why? Because it probably is. That's the most obvious conclusion. And the people who say brain and mind are the same thing, okay, try this one on for size. Let me see if I have time. Try this one on for size. Think of someone's personality. Running out of time. Okay, this is my last thing I'll say and then I'll let it go. Think of someone's personality. Just take Shannon. Take anyone. Shannon. Shannon's very Shannon-esque, correct? Shannon acts and presents herself a lot like Shannon. You get it, right? She's a strong personality, kind of a good personality, charming personality, but she has a very distinct personality, right? Physically, materially, she's indistinguishable from others of her kind, other women. Correct? Correct. So what is making a personality? What's the distinguishing thing there? It can't possibly be explained by strictly physical properties. Why? Because where on earth would you locate it if it were located in physical property? It is not locatable because it is not one aspect of her physical consciousness or one aspect of her physical brain. It transcends the entirety of them, is all of them acting together. So if you were looking for a neural correlate to a personality, you couldn't find one. Why? Because it's all of them functioning together, transcends the whole. Brain and mind are subtly distinct. Even if it's only subtly distinct, they're still distinct. The analogy that all the atheists always use, Superman and Clark Kent, the same thing. No, they're not. That's the point. Your analogy underscores what I'm saying. Actually, it argues for me. No, they're not. There's a subtle distinction between Superman and Clark Kent. There is. Otherwise, we call Superman, Superman, and Superman, Superman. Who's that? Superman. They say he's Clark Kent. Why? He looks a little different. Yeah, it's technically the same guy. Could be, the brain and mind could be that closely linked that they're technically the same, but still subtly different. That's why I said there's matter and phenomena of matter. This isn't up for debate, guys. This is just facts. This is just, you either see this clearly and understand reality or you don't. Promise. The physicalist is the weakest position. Why? Because the same person, Aaron Rouse, says we shouldn't believe things by faith, we should proportion our beliefs to the evidence, basically adopts a faith-based position on physicalism. One day we'll find a neurological correlate that will tie it all together. No, we won't. Why? Because a personality can't be siphoned down to just one aspect of your brain. It transcends the entire whole. And Superman and Clark Kent are not identical. They're very, very close, but one of them wears glasses and he works, and the other guy is a little different. They're the same guy, sure, technically, but the subtle distinction is still a distinction. So ask yourself a question. Nobody ever asked you, are house and house the same thing, right? Why? Because the question doesn't make any sense. Why? Because house and house are exactly the same thing. Brain and mind are subtly different, even if the difference is only subtle. Superman and Clark Kent are not exactly the same thing. They are subtly different. Even if they're technically the same guy putting on two separate identities, there's still a subtle variation there which distinguishes one from the other. A way you can differentiate. Who's that walking down? That's Clark Kent. Well, isn't that Superman? Yes, it is Superman, but right now it's Clark Kent. He's appearing to us as Clark Kent. The subtle distinction could be that subtle. Still a distinction. Still variation between brain and mind. Sorry. End of discussion. Sorry, end of discussion. That's why physicalists struggle to make sense. Consciousness is an illusion. Struggle to make sense of that. Same guy who said consciousness is an illusion, later on in the same debate, basically agreed to the fact that consciousness was the most important thing about being a human being. Yeah, okay, but except it's an illusion. Talk about wildly self-contradictory ideas. All of the atheist presuppositions, the most common ones, all of them. If you take them out in the cold light of day, if you're an atheist, trust me and do it. The smart atheists have already done it. The smart, honest atheists are already doing it. Take them out in the cold light of day and examine them. They fall apart. Why? Because there's no sufficient warrant for them. They're indefensible. They are just like young earth creations. That's why new atheists always argue with people in ways that are completely confounding and suck. Why? And some people will say they're just like new young earthers. Why? Because they're virtually identical. Same sort of irrational, let me just believe this for no particularly good reason and argue it. Why? Because I just exist. And they just keep going back to the same things. It's virtually identical. It's an indefensible position. Most 80% of the atheist community is carrying around philosophical, metaphysical presuppositions that are indefensible. The smarter ones are not. The smarter ones are not. They've already moved into places like Thomas Nagel is the guy who wrote What It's Like to Be a Bat, right? Okay, he's already moved to something akin to Neoplatonism. I'm pretty sure that's how he reconciles it. That's a perfectly defensible, robust position. But it's closer in spirit to me, the theist, than it is to Aaron Ra. Do you see? Come on, tell me you see, guys. Tell me you get it. Please tell me you get it. Wasn't that hard? Do you see? You're not going to convince Aaron Ra that somebody rose from the dead. Why? He doesn't have sufficient warrant. But you could easily convince him, if you were being honest, that his metaphysical presuppositions suck. Why? Because they suck. That they aren't warranted, they're indefensible. Why? Because they aren't warranted and they're indefensible. So you easily get him to see that. Do you get it now? We could win all these debates really easily. No, we don't have to worry about whether people become Christians or not. I don't care. Again, I say this 1,000 times, I don't care what you believe. You're an atheist, as long as you're cool with me, if you like Dave and Joe, and you're Joe and Dave, is that your name? Yeah, whatever. We don't even have to talk about it. We can watch zombie flicks and talk about The Cure, talk about The Who. We talk about Tommy the Who. I just gave a whole speech on Tommy the Who. I don't even know where that came from, right? I gave a whole speech in the video. Yeah, we were listening. Yeah, I gave a whole weird speech on Tommy the Who, correct? Okay. We can talk about that. I don't care. I don't care what any of you believe. The only reason why I'm doing it this way is because this is the right way to do it. It's really easy to do. It's really easy to do if you do it right. You do it wrong and you lose a debate. You get your hat handed to you, you walk off. And the atheist goes, see, God doesn't exist. Why? Because young earth creationism is false. That's what happened. That's what happens. Because the Bible probably isn't inerrant. The Bible may be inerrant, but that's a really hard thing to prove. And they're always going to win that debate. So I'll put that under maybe. Because there's a couple of weird ones in there that are hard to reconcile. So, anyways, with that, I'll wrap it up. A great video, if you ask me. Great video. Yeah, great video, Craig. I understand. Yes, I agree. I thought it was really rock solid. A lot of awesome points. And the most important part about my awesome points, you're not going to hear them anywhere else. These are straight from the horse's mouth. These are things I concocted in my little chamber of secrets. Okay? Yeah, I'm borrowing from other people. I've been listening to a lot of Jay Dyer nowadays. He's not as great as he thinks he is, but he's a lot better than everybody else thinks he is. He's really got the underpinnings of that Orthodox church. I've been listening to a couple of people who stream with him, who talk about presups. The philosophical underpinnings of presuppositionalism are actually really strong. The presuppers actually throw the arguments away by, trying to force people. There's a whole history behind what they do, but the actual philosophical underpinnings are really robust and pretty strong. They really are. And they're defensible, as long as you're not trying to achieve too much with them. Only thing you're trying to achieve, if you're going this route, is just get the atheist to examine, put out in the cold light of day, his metaphysical presuppositions, his philosophical underpinnings. But honest people should be doing that anyways, by the way. Dave and Joe do that anyways. I'll go into this in another video. They're actually critical thinkers. They're really good at critical. They're great critical thinkers. Most atheists suck at it. They talk about it all the time. They don't do it. Dave and Joe do it. Watch how they stream. They got 4 guys usually, Phil, Dave, Joe, and sometimes Adelaide or Alistair or whatever. Some other guys sometimes shows up. Seems to have disappeared for a while. And they take things out into the cold light of day and examine them. Now, that's actually biblical. It is, I promise. There's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. So they take a proposition out and they talk about it 4 different ways. Gives you insight into the proposition. That's a really good way for philosophers to arrive at truth. That methodology is, I'll go into this in another video where I explain that in detail, but that methodology is great. It produces what? Great critical thinking. They're really good at critical thinking. Almost every other atheist is terrible at it. Some atheists are okay. Most atheists suck. Why? Because they're presuppers. They really are. They're presuppers. Ask Ron. Ron will explain it in depth. They're presuppers. They decided once upon a time, a long time ago, and then they don't even listen to you half the time. They decided on something to put on a different social imaginary. They deconstruct, and they switched squads, changed all their metaphysical priors, so that, and they don't even really listen to you or read your tweets. They're just trying to jerk your chain and waste your time. I swear to God, that's true. They're just trying to jerk your chain, waste your time. They're not really engaged in any other thing than trying to score points for atheism. They're not even, that's the whole thing I was talking about with debating. They're not even worth talking to half the time. But there are honest atheists. And those honest atheists, they don't have to become Christians. I don't care. But the honest atheists have already done it. John Vervaeke, as I said, already has robust philosophical justifications for his positions, or at least defendable ones. He already has them. And the thing I told you is true. He's closer in spirit to me than Aaron Ra. A lot closer. A lot closer. And the only thing we can move Aaron Ra to, and it should be easy to do, is to be more like John Vervaeke. Should be easy to do. Why? Because we're not asking him to believe anything that isn't proportional to the data and the facts. We're not asking him to speculate. We're watering down our metaphysical commitments on purpose. Why? Because they can't be defended in public. They may be true, but they're indefensible. We're watering them down on purpose to defend stuff that's what? Virtually unassailable. You get it? Come on, tell me you get it. It's really good, guys. That's really darn good. I swear to God, that's good. I swear to God, that's good stuff. If you don't see that that's good stuff, whatever, go watch cat videos. Why? Because I've had it. I'm not dealing with you anymore. The cat videos that you go to the cat videos, you're not allowed to listen anymore. Why? Because you're out. You're done. That's good stuff, guys. I promise. I promise. And if you don't think it's good enough now, wait a year from now when I polish it up and really dust it off and make it precise. Watch out. Why? Game over, I think. Again, I don't care if they stay atheists. Don't believe in God, fine with me. I don't believe in God, fine with me. It's not what this is about. This is about arriving at truth, the only way to arrive at truth. And philosophy can be just as robust as science. But there's a process. The reason why philosophy isn't is because people don't follow a process that actually produces truth. Dave and Joe and Philip do. They do. They may have stumbled upon that accidentally, but it's the right methodology for real critical thinking. They may have stumbled on it accidentally, organically, but it's still the right methodology. Here's the proposition, let's discuss this, and then you got 4 different opinions and subtle variations. So like Luke will say something really dumb. No, I'm just kidding. Luke will say something really dumb and Dave will correct him. No. Then Luke will say something and then Dave will have a different opinion. You get 4 subtle variations on something and you start to get real insight. That's how real philosophy is born, where you produce truth. I swear to God that's true, guys. I swear to God, it's the right way to approach this stuff. It's the right path. I promise. Anyways, so with that, I will wrap it up. Yeah, I know you went on a lot, Craig. 52 minutes. Wow, these are getting longer. I was trying to make them shorter. All right. Well, this one's a little too long. If you're still here, thank you for sticking in to the end. I wish I could give you like a Craig Reed point to see who watches the video to the end. I bet you only 1 or 2 people are here, if anybody's here. If you're not here, I apologize for going on as long as I did, but I was really enjoying myself, honestly, and making solid points. So there you have it, kids. That's all for now. The Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.